You've probably seen the disciples painted like quiet saints, calmly arranged around Jesus.
But the Gospels show something stranger, messier, and honestly, far more hopeful. Jesus chose fishermen, outsiders, hotheads, skeptics, and one man who would betray him. A disciple was a learner, but an apostle was someone sent with authority. That distinction matters because Jesus formed ordinary followers before sending witnesses into history. Before naming the 12, Luke says Jesus prayed alone through the entire night. At daybreak, he called his followers and chose 12 from the larger crowd. The number 12 echoed Israel's 12 tribes, announcing a renewed people around Jesus. The old story of Israel was being gathered into a new center. So this was not a random team. It was a living sign. Every name carried a story of failure, courage, misunderstanding, and transformation. And the surprising part is how painfully ordinary they actually were. Simon Peter comes first because the Gospels constantly place him near the center. He was a Galilean fisherman, practical, emotional, brave, and painfully impulsive. He spoke quickly, acted quickly, and often learned through painful correction. Jesus renamed him Peter, meaning rock, long before Peter looked steady. Peter confessed Jesus as Messiah, then immediately misunderstood the path of suffering. He stepped onto stormy water, then sank when fear swallowed his courage. He promised loyalty unto death, then denied Jesus 3 times before dawn. After the resurrection, Jesus restored Peter beside a fire and recommissioned him. 3 denials were met by 3 questions of love, not rejection. Peter's story says public failure can become public service through grace. Tradition later connects Peter with martyrdom in Rome, but details remain debated. James and John were brothers, fishermen, and partners in a family business. Jesus nicknamed them Sons of Thunder, which hints at intense spiritual ambition. Their passion was real, but it needed to be converted by Jesus. When Samaritans rejected Jesus, they wanted judgment to fall from heaven. They also asked for the highest seats in Jesus' coming kingdom. Jesus redirected their thunder away from status and toward sacrificial service. James became the first of the 12 whose martyrdom Scripture records clearly. John appears to have lived longest, remembered by tradition as a witness in Ephesus. The thunderous brother became associated with love, testimony, and patient endurance. The New Testament gives James's death plainly, while John's final years come through tradition. Andrew, Peter's brother, is quieter, but his pattern is unforgettable. He first followed John the Baptist, then immediately brought Peter to Jesus. Later, Andrew noticed a boy with loaves and fish when everyone else saw scarcity. He was not usually center stage, but he kept connecting people to Christ. Andrew reminds us that unseen introductions can change the entire future. Tradition links Andrew with missionary work around the Black Sea and Greece. Philip was from Bethsaida, and Jesus called him with 2 simple words. Philip immediately found Nathanael and invited him to come and see. Yet Philip also calculated problems, especially when a hungry crowd needed bread. He saw the numbers before he saw what Jesus could do with them. In the upper room, Philip asked for the Father to be shown. Jesus answered by pointing Philip back to the face already before him. Nathanael, likely identified with Bartholomew, entered the story with sharp skepticism. Bartholomew appears in the apostle lists, while John tells Nathanael's calling story. When told about Jesus of Nazareth, Nathanael wondered whether anything good could come. Jesus answered that skepticism, not by shaming him, but by seeing him. Under the fig tree, Nathanael had been known before he ever arrived. His doubt collapsed into worship when he recognized Jesus as Israel's king. Bartholomew's later story is mostly tradition, so certainty ends with Scripture. Thomas is remembered as doubting, but John gives him much more depth. When Jesus returned toward danger, Thomas urged the others to die with him. His courage was gloomy, but it was still courage wrapped in loyalty.
After the resurrection, Thomas demanded wounds, not rumors, as proof.
That demand was not casual cynicism. It was grief, needing something solid. Jesus met that demand, and Thomas answered with one of Scripture's highest confessions. Tradition strongly associates Thomas with the ancient Christian communities of India. Matthew, also called Levi, may be the most scandalous name on the list. He collected taxes in Galilee, a job many neighbors associated with betrayal. Tax collectors could profit from an occupying system that wounded their own people.
Jesus called him from the tax booth, and Matthew stood up immediately.
Then Matthew hosted sinners at his table, turning his house into a doorway. Jesus defended that meal by saying the sick are the ones needing a doctor. Matthew's new life began not with respectability, but with a table full of outsiders. Across the group stood Simon the Zealot, a title loaded with anti-Roman intensity. Even if the title simply means zealous one, Simon represented another world. Imagine Matthew, the collaborator, and Simon, the revolutionary, walking beside each other. Jesus did not avoid conflict by choosing people who already agreed. He created a community where loyalty to him became stronger than politics. The 12 were not proof that everyone naturally gets along. They were proof that Jesus can create unity deeper than old enemies. Then come the quiet names, beginning with James, son of Alphaeus. Scripture tells us almost nothing about him beyond his place among the 12. His silence is not an embarrassment. It is a reminder that faithfulness can be hidden. Not every foundation stone gets a famous speech in the story. James, son of Alphaeus, matters because Jesus remembers names history almost forgets. Thaddaeus appears under multiple names, likely including Judas, son of James. John carefully calls him not Iscariot, because another Judas became infamous. His one recorded question asks why Jesus reveals himself to disciples, not the world. Jesus answers by describing love, obedience, and God making his home with believers. One obscure question opened one of the deepest promises in John's Gospel. Judas Iscariot is the darkest name because closeness never became surrender. He heard the teaching, saw the miracles, and carried the group's money bag. John portrays him as stealing, while the Gospels connect betrayal with silver and Satan. Judas's kiss in Gethsemane turned friendship's gesture into a weapon. Matthew says remorse crushed him, but remorse did not become returning trust. Peter failed terribly and ran back toward mercy, while Judas ran into despair. Judas warns us that religious proximity is not the same as transformed love. The tragedy is not only betrayal, but refusing the mercy standing nearby. After Judas's death, Acts says the remaining believers prayed and chose Matthias. Peter said the replacement should be a witness from baptism to ascension. His role restored the 12 as witnesses to the resurrection and renewed Israel. From that upper room, a frightened group became a spirit-empowered movement. Critics later said the believers were turning the world upside down. But it began with people who misunderstood, argued, doubted, and ran away. The miracle of the 12 is not that Jesus found perfect men. The miracle is that Jesus made broken people into witnesses of resurrection. Their stories leave a question for every viewer who feels unqualified. What could grace do with your weakness if you actually followed him? Follow the one who still turns weakness into a doorway for grace.